We'll start with Benzema, if we may, because I know that it was his 35th birthday, and the present that he gave to the world is that he is decided to call time on his international career. It's been an interesting international career, because I think he spent, from debut to where we are yesterday, 5.5 years out of that international side. How will the people of France look back at Karim's time with the national side?
You know what? I think that's such a difficult question, Adam, because he is the best French striker around. He's also, on an international standpoint, really, really quite unfulfilled. I think you look at the numbers compared to other elite strikers of the times. 97 games for France, which feels like a lot to have not really quite convinced people in. 37 goals. Obviously, there's more to Benzema's game than goals. But still, it just feels like he's been in the wrong place at the wrong time a lot of the time. It felt at the start of this tournament that him not being in the team actually solved a lot of problems for France. Even if he's the Ballon d'Or and even if he's the best French striker out there, them fitting him in on the fly, or trying to fit him in on the fly at the Euros last year, it didn't really work. I think you could see Mbappe and Griezmann worked better with Giroud. There was no doubt about that. The whole team clicked together better. And whereas there's been this weird relationship between Deschamps and Benzema, because you said he was out for 5.5 years. He wasn't officially banned at any point.
No.
Deschamps just decided not to pick him. And I've always wondered if there was a tactical side to that, because he was so difficult to fit in and make function as part of the team. And all the other off-pitch stuff just kind of played for Deschamps, really. It kind of worked for him. So now, of course, at the start of the tournament, that difficult, it was a kind of gentle acquiesce, I suppose, but that trust has disappeared again, because when there was that injury at the start of this tournament and the staff said, well, you're not going to be fit, you've got to go home, he felt, well, you could hold me out for the first couple of group games, it seems, and I'll be fine. He's been posting loads of pictures of himself playing in a friendly for Real Madrid, on the gym, on the bike, saying, I'm fine, I'm ready. And, you know, they even had to pipe down the rumour that he would come back to Qatar for the final, because he was still officially in the squad. That was never the case for the French staff. They were never going to do that. But for him, it just feels like another missed opportunity. And you know what, he's just saying now, let's just leave it.
Do you think he's that disappointed though? Because he's just come off the back of winning the Ballon d'Or. Do you think he's thinking, do you know what, I've done enough now, I've proved my worth, but obviously the French team don't want me?
You know what, Carlton, I think for any player of that sort of level, it's not what he needs to prove to the world, it's what he feels would be right for himself. I mean, it's like the Messi question. You know, there's all this discussion about, is he the best player in the world now he's won the World Cup? You know, is he the best player of all time now he's won the World Cup? Which is really nonsense, because, you know what? If your opinion of Messi has changed over this tournament, I don't know what you've been watching for the last 15 years. We know what player he is. We know what he's worth to football. It was really his reward. It was a moment for him, not anyone else, to say, this is the moment I wanted to crown my career. And I kind of feel that it would have been the same for Benzema. To go to a World Cup after all those false starts, the fact that he didn't get picked in 2010 because he had a poor first season at Real Madrid, the fact that, you know, he didn't score at Euro 2008, Euro 2012, it didn't quite work in World Cup 2014 either. You know, all these little things that he missed. I think it would have been a moment for him to celebrate, not for anyone to change their opinion in France on what Benzema is or how good he is. Because when he came back into the squad, I think the most notable thing is all the younger players were like, oh my God, we're playing with Benzema. It's incredible. It felt like a huge thing for him. And you could feel the same thing with Messi, with some of those younger players like Montiel, like Enzo Fernandez. It's a big deal for them. So, you know, he has got this legendary status, but it would have meant so much to him, I think.
For the team, though, and the way that dynamic works, Deschamps is justified in a way with the way that he has handled this whole situation. Because if you actually look at, I think he's had 5 major tournaments, Deschamps, over his tenure. He's hit 3 finals.
Yeah. Obviously
won the World Cup in that as well. And those three in particular, Benzema wasn't really. I know that this one he was involved, but he wasn't involved. He hasn't been involved in those squads, and the 2 that he was involved in, they went out relatively early in those tournaments. So the team dynamic, actually, from a Deschamps point of view, he was right to leave out his best striker.
100%, Adam, and I think Deschamps has always been like that. He's been a pragmatist. It's collective first, and it's not just about picking the best 11 players at international level. And it's a stick that he's been beaten with by the French public. It's quite similar actually to the way Gareth Southgate is called negative and circumspect and all those sort of things. But the team ethic is something that matters to him more than entertaining. He wants to win, which is ultimately what we all want. But I think when you look at that, it's a really tricky one, because everyone wants to see the absolute best players at a World Cup. But they tried bringing him back because he was having this special moment, and because he kind of nudged Giroud out the way, because he changed post Cristiano Ronaldo at Real Madrid. Like, he could hold the ball up, he could be a target man, he could win headers, as well as all the Benzema stuff that made him a striker like no other. So he was like turbo Giroud, he was like beyond Giroud, deluxe Giroud. But it turns out that fitting him in was still really difficult, because he wants to do all that other stuff. And he let other players know along the way. When Giroud got annoyed that Benzema took his place, he's like, well, if you can't sit on the bench, maybe you won't be in the squad. He threatened to not take him to the World Cup. He's moved Mbappe about as suit the team best. He's moved Griezmann about as suits the team best. So, it's always collective first for him.
Do you think he stays on, Deschamps?
I think he does. And do you know what? I think that this is part of Benzema's decision, because if Zidane, who has been waiting in the wings for want of a better phrase, for Deschamps to fail, really, because if Deschamps is gone, Zidane straight in there. Say if they'd have gone out in the group stage or the last 16 or the quarter final, I think Deschamps is gone, and I think we're already talking about the new coach of France in Zinedine Zidane. I think it happens this quickly, because money doesn't really matter to Zidane. He's turned down loads of other offers. He had the possibility to discuss the Manchester United job before, the Juventus job. He's not interested, because he wants to wait for this one. Whereas now it feels as if Deschamps' terms, it seems, are, I will stay on if you contract me, not just till Euro 2024, but till World Cup 2026. And then I'll go then. And if you're Benzema, you're thinking, right, well, I'm done. I don't get on with this bloke. Whereas him and Zidane are very, very close. So that completely changes the game if Zidane becomes French coach, which seems very unlikely now.
Does it seem as well? Is that the end for Giroud as well? Is this his last World Cup? Is this his last hurrah?
I think it's his last World Cup, Carlton. I don't know if it's his last Euros.
International game.
I think it's always been teased that way, because it felt, because he was such a subordinate to Benzema, that every time he was going for that record just before the World Cup, that it could be his last chance. But the fact that Benzema was out completely changed things for him, because him starting gave him the opportunity, which he seized in terms of goals, and there you go, he's France's top scorer of all time, until Mbappe catches him up in about 18 months' time. but I think it has changed things for Giroud, and if Benzema's permanently gone, I think you're right. I think that slightly extends Olivier Giroud's international career, because no striker can do for France what he can do. He's got a particular profile.
What type of numbers is Kylian Mbappe going to generate over the next 10 years in particular? I mean, if he can go for 15, that would be tremendous. But let's say 10 years, given where he's currently at 20, just turned 24 years of age, what type of numbers can this kid generate?
Well, I think in terms, Adam, of what he's done at the World Cup, there's just no stopping him already. I mean, bear in mind, at the same age that he has scored 12 World Cup goals, and Miroslav Klose's record of World Cup finals goals looks really small at the moment when you look at it yesterday morning. Messi had one at the same age. That's where we are, and it's these players are so good. Mbappe and Messi are so good, and particularly Messi is so good. It seems kind of vulgar and rude to just discuss them in terms of numbers. But having said that, I think that there's always been, since they've been at PSG together over the last year and a half, this sort of mutual respect. They're not friends, they're not close or anything like that, Mbappe and Messi, but there's an understanding of them as two people who really love football more than anything else, and two players who know that even though they have these incredible numbers, their numbers are not everything that they can give to the team. Mbappe's not a deadweight when he's not scoring. Now, I think it's quite impressive how, and strange in a way, how he's kind of spared his efforts in international football. If you look at his running numbers compared to some of the other players in the tournament, they're not much, because he's saving it all for the sprints. So in that way, I think, even though Messi's over a decade older than him, I think he's learned something from Messi at PSG. So what you've got to understand about Mbappe is he's a football nerd. He's a total obsessive student of football. There's a lot of footballers you interview and you speak to, and you realise they don't really watch that much football. The first time I spoke to Mbappe when he was still at Monaco when he was 18, it was obvious he watched everything. And I was speaking to some of the people at Monaco and they're like, you don't understand. He knows every player. He watches every game. And I think what we're not taking into account, this year and a half with Messi, or this 2 years or 3 years or whatever it's going to be with Messi, this is going to be the bit that will help Mbappe, injury notwithstanding, reach his level. Simply because he's just absorbing all of it. He's a sponge. He's taking in every little thing that Messi does. And that's going to help him not just now, but in 5 years and in 10 years.
Andy, top man. Thank you so much for going through all that. The fallout to the World Cup final from the French angle.
talkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.